Hello everybody, welcome back to RP-1 with Soul Beta. Today we are focusing on 3 different launches that will solve 2 contracts and pick up a little bit of residual science from the last episode. Today we are focusing on the downrange 3,000 kilometers, mostly the building of that as well as the launch. And we are going to attempt our first plane mission today. So very excited to get started. Here is the bumper rocket that I designed to handle the contract. However, I did forget to record the building process for it. So instead, we are actually just going to create a new craft and try to recreate this as best as possible. But as we see here, it's a 2-stage rocket with the sounding rocket that we used in the last episode, an upgraded version of it, but we'll show you that when we go and add it. So let's go ahead. And we're going to actually save this as an alternative version because I would like to just save the BR01 from here. So we are going to speed through the footage. This is a lot of basically any of my 3,000 kilometer downrange episodes. A lot of the same stuff. We are going to be using the RD100 tank, engine, which is one of my favorites for this kind of craft. We are going for the 2 meter diameter on the tank, so a little bit bigger of a rocket. I think I am going to go back into heavy rockets once we get into the satellites, heavy satellites program. I think I'm going to go for that. So having a base of a little bit bigger building will set the precedence for that. So we get the RD100 in there, and we're going to try to adjust the size of this. I like having it buried within a hollow cone. I think you can just have it clipped into the fuel tank, and that gives you more fuel to have, but I like the realism of having a hollowed out space for the engine to occupy. So right now I'm looking at the difference between a steel fuselage and a high-pressured steel fuselage, and for this I'm deciding to avoid the high pressure because we actually don't get as much delta V and it is slightly heavier than the regular steel fuselage, so we're going to go with that. However, we are going to change that later. We are going to need to build this rocket on the backs of science that we don't actually have. As you see here, we already need early rocketry in order to utilize the engine that we selected, but the engine that we selected, the more advanced one, is kind of necessary for us to get this launch done correctly the first time consistently. So it's unfortunate, however, we do have some time to kill. We are going to be working on building a plane as well, so that means that we're going to also need some technology from there. So now I just take the sounding rocket from the previous episode, which I had made into a subassembly. I put it on top, and then I upgrade the U1250 engine to its highest configuration. And so that will also need early rocketry in order to build. Let's go ahead and get our staging correct. Make sure that we have the most advanced science experiments we have, and of course the basic science experiments are as advanced as we have, so we will have to wait on putting anything more advanced in there, which is a little nerve-wracking because in early game science demands are pretty high, and you can lock yourself out pretty quickly. So we do need to make sure we handle everything wisely. So we created the bumper rocket 01. We're going to go ahead and fill the avionics with the appropriate amount of electricity and control, and then we're going to test it a little bit more. I realize I don't actually need a parachute for this contract. I technically don't even need that decoupler, but I utilized the all-moving wings, and it was moving way too wildly, so I am going to actually remove those in favor of just the static wings. So I don't actually need very much control. The engine has a little bit of gimbal, so my usage of all moving wing parts was kind of unnecessary. So we go ahead and get our center of lift, center of mass lined up correctly. We don't need tail fins on the upper stage on the sounding rocket, so we're not going to include them to save ourselves some weight and all that. But at this point, I'm struggling to make the 3,000 downrange, and I decide it would probably be in my best interest to include better materials for our tanks. So we are going to use the aluminum fuselage for this, but now that means that we need post-war material science in order to build this rocket. So and pushing us back a little bit further on being able to create this, but it is worthwhile because on the first try it easily clears the goal. So I'm pretty happy with the performance of this, so we're going to go ahead and color it. Normally I like to go for an olive green on my bumper rocket, but I felt this time around I think I might go for black. It's kind of interesting. The white and blue theme for the rest of it, the very aerated type look. We're going to go ahead and rename this to the BR-01. And we're going to have to modify our launch pad slightly, just because it is just ever so slightly underweight. I actually probably could have just added more fuel into this and just had it overburn, but I decided to change the launch pad instead. Anyways, here is our first launch of the episode. This is simply the exact same sounding rocket that we had in the last one. We just want to pick up some residual science. This was already in the production queue, so by the time we finished our designs of our plane and our rocket, it was basically ready, so there's no point in just scrapping it. We might as well launch it because we still have a little bit of residual science from the upper atmosphere and a little bit from space. I believe that we just break the Kármán line just ever so slightly right there, right before we come back in. And as you saw, we got a little flash of science, and we're just going to time warp our way back down to a safe and secure landing. So easy mission, went without a hitch, no point in really focusing on it, but it does give us 4 extra points of science, which is very useful. We're going to go ahead. I would like to put it into the next supersonic flight, however, that is going to require early material science, as we see here. We're not going to be able to unlock that mature supersonic flight, excuse me. So instead we are going to spend it on avionics prototypes. That's something that's going to be important. Having a little bit cheaper and lighter ones soon will be good. However, that material science is very important, so I am going to really consider my science soon. By tooling all the parts, it makes the bumper rocket really cheap, $878 funds, excuse me, to launch the thing. So I'm going to go ahead and line up 3 of them into the build queue. So now we are going to move on to the X-Plane programs and the build for today. I just want to show you a little bit of the footage. I spent several hours working on this design and testing and trying to get it right, but unfortunately, no matter what I did, I just couldn't get it to work for the contract. I feel like the design was just terrible. It's a basic design. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it, and it just was not coming out, and I decided I'm going to need to do a little bit more homework before I try to build my own planes and try to fudge the aerodynamics, you know, by memory. I should probably have better references. So for today's episode, we're actually going to take out the supersonic jet trainer. This is one of the stock crafts that comes with RP-1 and Realism Overhaul. It does have an engine that is too advanced. However, we would have had to unlock that mature supersonic flight in order to use it. So we're just going to replace the engine with one that we do have access to. Going to go ahead and do a test flight. It was struggling to meet the speed necessary requirement. However, we had 51 minutes of burn time, which is ridiculously overpowered. So we're actually going to lighten the craft by removing most of the fuel out of it, but it ends up cutting the weight of it nearly in half, and that allows us to go considerably fast. So we're going to go ahead and modify the hangar. Once that's done, we're going to go ahead and tool the plane. It's not as cheap as the bumper rocket, but it's good enough. We're going to get our pilot into the classroom so he can fly this thing, and we will visit that launch at the end of the episode. But for now, we have our second launch and our first contract of the day, the 3,000 kilometer downrange. This is a particularly important milestone to make. This is a contract that a lot of people end up struggling with right in the beginning when they first do. There's some concepts that need to be practiced. There's a different flight path that needs to be achieved. We aren't going to be using MechJeb's ascent guidance for this. I'm currently just doing it by hand, just tilting over ever so slightly. I'm going to attach to prograde, and that's going to allow us to hold and tip over slightly. However, this is an extremely inefficient launch profile. And right there, once we get into the higher atmosphere, I'm just going to drop it over to 42 degrees without any kind of gravity turn or anything. We're going to spin up and spin stabilize. Now this is, like I mentioned, a terrible flight profile that's not efficient in the slightest, and it's not good. I'm going to be honest with you, that's not good. However, I have noticed some success in dealing with a straight up launch, a sharp right turn, and then utilizing altitude in order to gain my distance, utilizing the rotation of the Earth a little bit. And so by making sure that my apoapsis is over 1,000,000 meters, then it gives me the distance to make it. I popped up the contract real fast. I don't know if you saw it, but it was green, saying that we did successfully cross the 3,000 kilometer distance, and we can go ahead and let our craft explode in the air, watching Firefly's beautiful effects rendered clearly in Sol Beta. So with that done, we have our downrange milestone easily handled, and I'm pretty excited to see how this same exact rocket will fare on the 5,000 kilometer, but that will be in the next episode. So now I'm actually going to cancel my research into the solid rocket boosters. I would love to have solid rocket boosters going forward, but early material science will help us not only in our rockets, but our planes, and so it's good to push that forward. So now, to finish off the episode, we are going to take our pilot, Reinhold Krauss, I believe is his name, and he is going to kick off our human-rated flight program. Hopefully we can utilize him several times before his retirement. In previous series, I ended up having some really great pilots that I lost to retirement before I was ready, simply because I didn't put them on interesting enough missions. So we're going to try to be a little bit better with that, especially since the X-Plane program is going to be a large part of this season because of the fact that Sol Beta has volumetric clouds, as you can see the fluffy little things right over there. But because of the fact that it has the volumetric clouds, and that made flying in stock Kerbal a lot more fun, modded Kerbal a lot more fun, I really want to explore that here. I think I'm actually going to do some flights that aren't mission related. I think I might want to just kind of fly around, go to different parts of the world, of the country, maybe even spawn my plane somewhere new. But as we bring up our contracts, we see that we have successfully broken the sound barrier. It only took us 100 kilometers away from the KSC. That was the appropriate distance for this plane. So that will give us a nice, solid approach. We're able to just kill our engines, and we're going to attempt to glide back in. We see in the contract that in order to complete it, we do have to return home safely. Thankfully, it's not requiring us to land at a certain angle on the runway, or even land on the runway at all. Essentially, we just need to make sure that Reinhold stays alive. We could dump this into the water if we need to, but ideally, since you get a little bit of reputation from landing on a runway, that is always going to be our goal. There are no air brakes on this thing. There are no parachutes. There's no drogue chutes in the slightest. There's nothing I can do to slow this down except for to apply my brakes. Make sure my engine is shut off, and I'm just leaning back and hoping as best I can. But with 10 kilometers to go, we kind of line ourselves up as best as we can. We're going 170 meters per second, which is considerably fast if we want to land. Having some air brakes here really would have helped, but nonetheless, I am lined up well enough at 141 meters per second, and we have a safe touchdown. However, we do not have a lot of runway left, and I really have to hold my breath when I see that explosion. But thankfully, Reinhold is alive. The mission has been completed successfully, and the paper will come out in the morning, proving that we indeed are masters of flight. So we get the Legion News headline. Did forget to take a good screenshot, so we instead have this one of it landing. That does allow us to unlock some programs and some leaders. We're going to go with Betty Love because she has some pretty good benefits to the X-Plane program. So we're going to take that. We've never had her as a leader before, so I'm interested to see how that does. We're not going to hire any of our other contractors just yet. We're going to wait until the next episode to really focus on what we want to do. But as we see here, we've got a lot of contracts to go on the X-Plane program, including upgrading the astronaut complex. So we got to make sure we leave some time for that to happen. But with early rocket development, we only have the one mission left. We do have some optionals that'll help us get some reputation, but we have plenty of time before our funding runs out. So I'm pretty excited to see where we can take that. In the next episode, we're going to attempt the 5,000 kilometer downrange contract, as well as another X-Plane program, and we may even take a free flight if we've got the time for it. But anyways, that is where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more Sol Beta. If you did, think about subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.